Between the Void. The observation deck of the Artemis VII offered a view that few humans had ever witnessed. Captain Sarah Chen stood before the reinforced glass, her reflection barely visible against the impossible darkness beyond. The black hole, designated as Cygnus X1, dominated the viewport, a gravitational monster that bent light itself into submission around its event horizon. Beautiful, isn't it? Sarah didn't turn. She recognized Dr. Marcus Webb's voice, tinged with the same awe that had colored every conversation since they'd arrived at this cosmic graveyard 3 weeks ago. "Beautiful and terrifying," she replied, her fingers unconsciously touching the silver locket hanging beneath her uniform. Inside, a photograph of her daughter Emma smiled eternally, frozen at 8 years old. Marcus approached, carrying 2 cups of synthetic coffee. The liquid swirled strangely in the reduced gravity field near the black hole. "We're almost done here. Another week of data collection and we head home. You must be counting the days." Sarah accepted the coffee, its warmth a small comfort in the cold efficiency of the ship. 743 days since launch. Emma will be 9 in 2 months. I promised her I'd be there. Her voice carried the weight of every parent who'd ever left their child behind for something they believed was important. The Artemis VII hummed around them, a symphony of technology and human ambition. 53 crew members called this vessel home, each one a volunteer for humanity's most audacious mission yet: to study a black hole up close, to dance on the edge of oblivion itself, and return with secrets that could reshape human understanding of the universe. "Captain, to the bridge." The intercom shattered the moment. The voice belonged to Lieutenant David Park, their chief engineer. Something in his tone made Sarah's heart accelerate. She was running before the announcement finished echoing through the corridors. Marcus followed, coffee forgotten on the observation deck railing. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as Sarah burst through the doors. Screens flickered with data streams that shouldn't exist, warning lights painting the crew's faces in shades of crimson urgency. "Report," Sarah commanded, dropping into her captain's chair with practiced ease. David's fingers flew across his console, sweat beading on his forehead despite the ship's climate control. "We're detecting a gravitational anomaly. It's not coming from the black hole. Captain, it's coming from inside the ship." "That's impossible." "Agreed, but the readings don't lie." He transferred the data to the main screen. Sarah watched as impossible numbers cascaded across the display. The fabric of space-time itself was bending within their hull, as if the Artemis VII had become a microscopic black hole itself. Navigation Officer Chen Lin spoke up, her voice steady but despite the tremor in her hands. "Captain, we're being pulled. Not toward the black hole, somewhere else. Reverse thrusters, full power. Already engaged, no effect. Whatever's got us, it's stronger than our engines." The ship groaned, a sound no vessel should make in the vacuum of space. Sarah gripped her armrests as the view outside transformed. The black hole, that cosmic lighthouse they'd orbited for weeks, began to distort. Not because of its own gravity, but because reality itself seemed to be folding. "All hands, secure stations. This is not a drill." Sarah's voice carried through every corridor, every cabin. Somewhere in the aft section, someone screamed. The ship lurched. Reality reasserted itself with violence, pulling them back through the cracks in the void. The entity's screams faded into silence as the Artemis VII tumbled back into normal space. Alarms blared, lights flickered. Then, gradually, systems stabilized. The main viewport showed blessed, beautiful stars. The black hole, Cygnus X1, hung in space exactly where they'd left it. "Status report," Sarah managed, her voice hoarse. Chen-Lin checked her instruments, blinked, checked again. "All systems nominal. Position confirmed. We're back where we started. But Captain, look at the chronometer. Sarah did. Her breath caught. 1 second. According to ship time, we were only gone for 1 second. But we were there for hours. We experienced hours. We made choices. What about David? The crew exchanged glances. David Park stood at his engineering station, alive and solid, looking confused. What about me, sir? You died in the void. You chose a parallel reality and got trapped. I don't remember any of that. I remember the gravitational anomaly starting, the captain ordering us to secure stations, and then, what? Next thing I knew, we were back here and everyone was staring at me weird? Marcus pulled up his logs. According to the computer, there was a quantum fluctuation that lasted 1.3 seconds. During that time, all conscious functions were suspended, like we were all in stasis. But I remember the void. I remember choosing. I remember... We all do, Yuki confirmed, every detail. But objectively, nothing happened. We didn't go anywhere. We didn't do anything. It was like a collective dream that lasted the space of a heartbeat. Sarah moved to the viewport, pressing her hand against the glass where Emma's face had been. The locket around her neck felt heavier suddenly. She opened it with trembling fingers. The photograph had changed, not dramatically, but undeniably. Emma's smile was wider now, more genuine, as if between 1 second and the next, she had somehow become happier. Or maybe Sarah had simply learned to see the joy that was always there, hiding beneath her guilt. Captain, incoming transmission from Earth, priority 1. Sarah's heart hammered as she moved to the communications station. Put it through. The screen flickered to life. Emma's face filled it. Not the quantum echo, not a parallel version, but her real daughter, beaming with excitement. Mom, can you hear me? Dad said I could surprise you. Emma? Emma, sweetie, how are you calling? This channel is for emergencies only. Dad said it was an emergency because I missed you so much. Emma giggled, that perfect sound that made everything else fade away. And guess what? I won the science fair. I built a model of your ship and explained black holes to everyone. They gave me first place and said I was just like my mom.
Sarah felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Baby, I'm so proud of you. Tell me everything. And Emma did, words tumbling over each other in her excitement. Sarah listened, really listened, not weighted down by guilt or second-guessing or wondering if she should have stayed. She simply experienced her daughter's joy, her pride, her love that transcended distance and time and the space between spaces. When the call ended, Sarah turned to find her crew watching her with soft expressions. That was real, Marcus said quietly. Not a parallel version, not a possibility. Just your daughter, being happy, being proud of you. I know, Sarah replied, and maybe that's what the void really taught us. Not that we have to choose between different lives, but that we have to accept the life we're living, all of it, the joy and the pain, the presence and the absence, the choices we made and the ones we didn't. Do you think it really happened? Yuki asked. The void, the entities, all of it? Sarah looked at each of her crew members. On David's wrist, just visible beneath his sleeve, was a faint mark. The same mark she'd noticed on Emma during that last moment in the void. The mark of something that shouldn't exist, but did. I think, Sarah said carefully, that we experienced something. Whether it was a quantum fluctuation, a mass hallucination, or a genuine journey to a place between realities, I don't know. But it was real enough to change us, real enough to matter. And David? Chen-Lin asked. In our shared experience, he died. He made a choice that killed him. But here he stands alive, with no memory of it. What does that mean? David spoke up, looking down at the mark on his wrist. I don't remember dying, but I remember dreaming. I dreamt I had a family, kids, a wife, a house with a garden. I dreamt I was dying, and they were all around me, saying goodbye. And I dreamt that I was okay with it, that dying young but loved was better than living long and alone. He looked up, eyes glistening. When I woke up, the dream faded, but the feeling didn't. The certainty that every version of my life has value, that I don't have to regret the paths I didn't take because they're being walked by other versions of me, in other realities, and they're all real, they're all valid. That's what the void taught us, Sarah said, or tried to. It showed us our infinite selves and asked us to choose. But the real lesson wasn't in choosing, it was in accepting, in forgiving ourselves for not being able to live every possible life, in understanding that letting go doesn't mean those lives are worthless. It means they belong to other versions of us, living them fully in realities we can't access. Marcus nodded slowly, and the entities, if they were real, they fed on collapse, on the death of possibilities. But when we refused to kill our parallel selves, when we accepted them instead, we starved the entities, we gave them nothing to feed on. Maybe, Sarah allowed, or maybe the entities were just another aspect of the void, a manifestation of our own guilt and regret, given form and voice. Maybe we weren't really fighting external beings. Maybe we were fighting ourselves, our inability to forgive our choices, our obsession with paths not taken. Heavy stuff for a 1-second quantum fluctuation, Yuki said with a slight smile. The heaviest stuff often happens in the spaces between seconds, in the pauses, the gaps, the voids we all carry inside ourselves. The bridge fell silent, each crew member lost in their own thoughts. Outside, the stars shone with patient indifference, beautiful and cold and eternal. The black hole continued its slow consumption of matter and light, unchanged by their brief encounter with impossibility. "Captain," Chen said, finally, "we have 6 months of mission left. What are your orders?" Sarah looked at the viewport one last time, then turned to her crew with renewed purpose. "We continue. We collect our data, we do the work we came here to do, and in 6 months, we go home. Not because we chose that reality over others, but because that's the reality we're in, the one we're living, and it's enough." "Enough," Marcus echoed, tasting the word. "When did enough become something to celebrate?" "When we stopped believing we had to be everything to everyone. When we accepted that being one person, living one life, making one set of choices is enough. Because somewhere, in realities we can't touch, all our other selves are living all our other lives, and they're enough too." The crew dispersed to their stations, returning to the comfortable rhythms of their mission. David to his engines, Chen to her navigation, Marcus to his endless streams of data. The ship hummed around them, alive and purposeful, carrying them through the darkness towards discoveries that would reshape human understanding of the universe. But in a way, they'd already made the greatest discovery of all, that reality was bigger than they'd imagined, more forgiving than they'd dared hope, and that love, real, flawed, absent or present, could bridge even the space between possible worlds. 7 months later, the Artemis VII docked at a lunar station. Sarah was the last to disembark, as captains always were. Her crew had already scattered to reunite with families, lovers, lives they'd left behind. Each one changed by their journey in ways that didn't show in mission reports or scientific papers. Sarah walked through the station's corridors with steady purpose, her bag slung over one shoulder. At the arrivals gate, she saw him, Emma's father, and beside him, a girl who'd grown from 8 to 9 in the space between heartbeats and eternities. Emma saw her first. "Mom!" The words stretched into a scream of joy as Emma broke away and ran, her feet pounding on the metal floor like drums heralding homecoming. Sarah dropped her bag and opened her arms. Emma crashed into her with enough force to knock the breath from her lungs, small arms wrapping around her waist, face buried against her uniform. "You came back," Emma whispered, so quietly only Sarah could hear. "You came back, and you're real." Something in those words made Sarah's heart skip. She pulled back slightly, looking down at her daughter's face. "Of course I'm real, baby. Why wouldn't I be?" Emma's eyes, so wise for 9 years old, met hers with an understanding that shouldn't be possible. "I had weird dreams while you were gone, dreams about the void and choosing and different versions of you, dreams where you weren't real or I wasn't real, where neither of us were. But you're here now, and that's all that matters." Sarah's hand went unconsciously to her locket, then froze. On Emma's wrist, barely visible beneath her sleeve, was a faint mark. The same mark David wore. The same mark shouldn't exist, in a place that didn't exist, in experiences that might never have happened. "Emma," Sarah said slowly, "do you remember how you got that mark?" Emma looked down at her wrist, touching the faint silvery pattern with one finger. "No, it just appeared one day. Dad says it's probably from art class or something. But sometimes when I look at it, I remember you, even when you're far away. It helps me feel like you're still here somehow, like we're connected across the darkness."
Sarah pulled Emma close again, her mind reeling. Had Emma truly reached across the void to her? Had that quantum echo been more real than she'd allowed herself to believe? Or had the experience in the void somehow changed reality retroactively, creating marks and memories that shouldn't exist? It didn't matter. That was the truth Sarah had learned in that space between spaces. Some questions didn't need answers. Some impossibilities didn't need explanations. Sometimes love was enough. Connection was enough. Being here, now, holding your daughter, that was enough. "I love you," Sarah whispered into Emma's hair. "Every version of you, and every possible reality, but especially this one, this you, right here, right now." Emma squeezed tighter. "I love you too, Mom. The you who left, and the you who came back, and all the yous in between." Behind them, Emma's father smiled, patient and understanding. He'd always been better at accepting the impossible than Sarah had been. Maybe that's why he'd never questioned the mark on Emma's wrist, or the dreams his daughter sometimes described, or the way Emma had seemed to know precisely to the second when her mother would return. They walked out of the station together, a family reunited, carrying secrets they didn't fully understand and marks they couldn't explain. Above them, beyond the lunar dome, the stars shone eternal. And somewhere in the darkness between those stars, between the spaces of reality itself, infinite versions of them lived infinite lives. But this life, this reality, these choices, this love was the one that mattered, because it was the one they were living together, finally. Sarah looked back once at the departure gates where her crew had already vanished into their own reunions. She thought of David and his dream of family, of Marcus and his sacrifice of children for science, of Chen Lin and her silent concert, of Yuki and all the paths not taken. They'd all gone into the void carrying guilt for choices made and unmade. They'd all emerged, not healed exactly, not fixed, but accepted, forgiven, by themselves, for themselves. That, Sarah realized, was the gift of the void. Not escape from difficult choices, but acceptance of them. Not erasure of regret, but understanding that regret was simply love for a path not taken. And love, in any form, was worth honoring. "Mom?" Emma's voice pulled her back. "Where'd you go just then?" Sarah smiled down at her daughter. "Just remembering something, a place between places, a moment between moments. Was it nice there? No, Sarah admitted. It was terrifying, but it taught me something important. What? Sarah knelt down to Emma's level, taking her small hands in her larger ones. I don't have to be the perfect mom who never left. I just have to be your mom who always comes back. That's enough. You're enough. This is enough. Emma's smile could have lit the dark side of the moon. I knew that already, but I'm glad you finally figured it out. They laughed together, the sound echoing through the station corridors, and in that laughter, in that perfect, ordinary moment of mother and daughter reunited, the last shadows of the void finally dissolved. Sarah Chen had traveled farther than any human before her, not just through physical space, but through the quantum fabric of possibility itself. She'd seen herself in 1,000 variations, lived in 1,000 realities, died in 1,000 ways, and she'd chosen the hardest thing of all, to return to the life she'd built, with all its imperfections and absences and difficult choices, and call it enough. Because it was enough. It always had been. She just needed to journey to the space between spaces to finally understand that simple, impossible truth. Years later, when Emma was grown and heading to the stars herself, she asked her mother one final question about the marks they both wore. Do you think we'll ever go back to that place you described, the void between realities? Sarah looked at her daughter, no longer a child, but not quite an adult, standing on the precipice of her own grand journey, and smiled. We're always there in a way. Every choice we make, every path we take, every person we love, we're always standing at the intersection of infinite possibilities. The void isn't a place we visit, it's a truth we live with. That's very philosophical, Mom. 3 years orbiting a black hole will do that to you. But here's what matters. Wherever you go, whatever you see, whatever impossible choices you face out there among the stars, remember that every version of you is real. Every path has value, and the life you're living right now, with all its beautiful imperfections, is enough. You're enough. Emma held up her wrist, the mark still faint but visible after all these years. And if I meet myself somewhere out there, in the spaces between? Tell her she's doing great, Sarah said with a grin. Tell her her mom is proud of her, all her moms, in all her realities. And tell her to come home when she's ready, because this reality, the one we share, will be waiting. They said goodbye at the departure gate, history repeating itself with roles reversed. Sarah watched Emma board her ship, not the Artemis VII, but the Horizon 3, destined for even more distant corners of the universe. And as the airlock sealed and the ship prepared for launch, Sarah touched the mark on her wrist and felt, for just a moment, the presence of all her parallel selves. They were out there, living their lives in realities she couldn't touch, some happy, some sad, some wildly different from her own. But they were all real. They were all her, and they were all enough. The Horizon 3 launched, a bright spark against the darkness, carrying Emma toward her own encounters with the impossible. Sarah watched until the ship vanished among the stars, then turned and walked back through the station corridors towards home. Behind her, in the space between stars, in the void between realities, in the pause between heartbeats, infinite versions of this moment played out in infinite variations. But this one, this moment, this goodbye, this love, was the one that mattered, because it was the one Sarah chose to live. And choosing to fully live the life you have,
Sarah had learned in the space between spaces was the bravest choice of all.
And then, silence. The kind of silence that shouldn't exist on a functioning spacecraft. No hum of life support, no whisper of air circulation, no distant thrum of the reactor. Just silence so complete it felt like a physical presence. "Status report," Sarah whispered, unsure why she felt compelled to whisper. David checked his console, then checked it again. "All systems show green, but Captain, look outside." Sarah turned to the viewport, her breath caught. Nothing. Not the nothing of empty space, where stars still shine and nebulae paint the darkness in shades of cosmic wonder. This was a nothing that made the void of space seem crowded by comparison. No stars, no black hole, no reference point of any kind. Just an absence so profound it seemed to devour even the concept of existence. "Where are we?" Chen Lin's question hung in the air, like a prayer no one could answer. Marcus had made his way to the bridge, his scientist's mind already racing through possibilities and discarding them just as quickly. "This doesn't match any theoretical framework. We're not in normal space. We're not even in space-time as we understand it." "Life support?" Sarah asked, forcing herself into captain mode even as her mind reeled. "Functioning, oxygen levels normal, but Captain, according to our chronometers, no time has passed since the anomaly began, not a single second." Sarah stood, needing to move, needing to act. "Send a message to Earth, full report of our situation." Chen Lin worked her console, then looked up with confusion clouding her features. "Ma'am, the communication array is functioning, but there's nowhere to send the message. The network shows no connection points, not even distant ones. It's as if the universe outside this ship has ceased to exist." The bridge lights flickered. For just a moment, Sarah thought she saw something in that darkness outside. A shape, perhaps, or the memory of a shape. Then the lights stabilized, and there was only the nothing again. "Get me a full diagnostic of every system. I want to know exactly what's working and what's not. Marcus, start analyzing whatever sensor data we have from the moment before the anomaly. David, check the hull integrity. Chen, maintain position relative to whatever this is." Orders flowed from Sarah like water, each command a small wall against the rising tide of impossibility. As the bridge crew dispersed to their tasks, Sarah found herself drawn back to the viewport. She pressed her palm against the glass, half expecting it to phase through into that nothing beyond. The glass held firm, warm beneath her touch. Her reflection stared back at her. Same brown eyes, same short-cropped hair, same lines of stress around her mouth that 3 years in space had etched deeper. But was there something else? A flicker at the edge of her vision, like her reflection had moved independently for just a fraction of a second. "Sarah." She spun. No one stood behind her. The voice had been clear, close enough to feel breath on her neck, but the bridge contained only the crew at their stations, all focused on their tasks. "Did anyone else hear that?" Her question drew blank looks. "Hear what, Captain?" David asked. Before Sarah could answer, every screen on the bridge went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in a pale blue glow. Then the screens flickered back to life, but they no longer showed ship diagnostics or sensor readings. They showed Sarah Chen. Not one Sarah, 3 Sarahs. On the port screen, she saw herself in civilian clothes, older, laugh lines crinkling around her eyes as she pushed Emma on a swing set. The sun shone golden on a world Sarah recognized as Earth, in a park she'd visited countless times. Emma laughed, her hair longer than Sarah remembered, her face showing the passage of years Sarah had missed.
The central screen displayed a Sarah who'd never become a mother. This version stood in a laboratory, her hand resting on a piece of equipment Sarah didn't recognize. Awards lined the walls behind her. Her eyes held the sharp focus of someone who dedicated everything to science, achieved everything they'd set out to do. But those eyes also held a loneliness so profound it seemed to leak through the screen. The starboard screen showed a nightmare. Sarah knelt in a cemetery, rain streaming down her face, mixing with tears. A small gravestone bore Emma's name and dates that made Sarah's heart stop. This Sarah looked hollowed out, a shell animated only by grief and something darker. Vengeance, perhaps, or the consuming need for meaning in meaningless tragedy. "What is this?" Marcus breathed, staring at the screens. Some kind of psychological warfare? But Sarah couldn't answer. She couldn't tear her eyes away from these impossible visions, because they felt real. Not simulations or projections, but actual windows into actual realities where she'd made different choices, where life had dealt different hands. The ship shuddered. A sound echoed through the hull, starting as a low rumble that built into something almost like words, almost like a voice speaking a language that predated language itself. "Captain," Chen Lin's voice shook, "I'm picking up movement outside the ship. Something's out there." Sarah forced herself to look away from the screens, back to the viewport. The nothing had changed. Or rather, something moved within it. Shapes that weren't quite shapes, presences that existed in the spaces between existence. They flowed like water and held their form like stone, contradicting themselves with every movement. As Sarah watched, one of the shapes approached the viewport. It possessed no features that her mind could properly interpret, yet she felt it looking at her, studying her, recognizing her. The thing spoke, and every crew member heard it simultaneously, not through their ears, but directly in their minds. The sensation felt like remembering a dream upon waking, that moment where reality and imagination blur together. You have entered the space between spaces, the void where all possibilities converge. Here, every choice you didn't make exists as real as the ones you did. Welcome, Sarah Chen. Welcome to the truth of infinite selves. Sarah found her voice, though it came out smaller than she'd intended. "What do you want from us?" "Want?" The concept seemed to amuse the entity. "We offer, we show, we reveal what you have always known but feared to acknowledge. You are not one person, Sarah Chen. You are infinite. Every decision a branch, every choice a new reality. And here, in this place outside place, you can see them all. You can choose to become one of them."
Marcus stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overriding his fear. "You're saying we're looking at alternate realities? Parallel universes?"
Such limited words for unlimited truth. These are not separate universes. They are all the same universe, all the same moment, existing simultaneously. Your linear perception creates the illusion of singular existence. We simply remove the illusion. David spoke up from his station.
"If we can see these realities, can we return to our own?" The entity's response carried something that might have been sympathy.
Your own? You speak as if you own a single reality. But which one is yours, David Park? The one where you lived, or the one where you died? David's face went pale.
"What?"
The starboard screen, which had been showing Sarah's grief-stricken parallel life, flickered. New images appeared. David saw himself lying in a hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting him to machines that fought a losing battle against cancer. He watched his parallel self die, surrounded by family, love and sorrow mixing in the sterile air of terminal care. "That's not real," David whispered. "I'm here. I'm alive." "Are you? Or is the David who died the real one, and you merely a possibility that persisted when he did not? In the void, all versions are equally real, equally true." More screens activated throughout the bridge. Each crew member found themselves confronted with windows into lives they hadn't lived, choices they hadn't made, losses they'd avoided, and losses they'd suffered. Chen Lin watched herself as a concert pianist. Marcus saw himself as a father of 4, far from the stars he'd dedicated his life to studying. Sarah forced herself to focus, to think like a captain, even as her heart ached at the sight of the parallel life where she'd never left Emma. "How do we leave this place?" "Leave? Why would you leave? Here you can become your best self, the version of you that made all the right choices. All it requires is a simple selection. Choose the reality you prefer, and we will make it yours." "And what happens to the other versions of us?" The entity's silence spoke volumes. Finally, it responded. "They cease. All possibilities collapse into one actuality. Is that not what you already do with every choice you make? Every decision kills 1,000 potential futures." Sarah looked at the screen showing her happy life with Emma, a life where she'd never left the Artemis VII, never left her daughter, never missed birthdays and school plays and all the small moments that built a childhood. That Sarah looked content in a way Sarah couldn't remember ever feeling. "Captain, we can't trust this thing." Marcus moved closer, his voice low. "This could be some kind of trap." "Or it could be real," David countered, his eyes still fixed on the image of his dying parallel self. "What if we really can choose? What if we really can correct our mistakes?" "By erasing ourselves?" Chenlin shook her head. "That's not correction, that's replacement." Sarah raised a hand for silence. "How long do we have to decide?" "Time does not exist here as you understand it. You have forever. You have never. The choice is always now, and now is eternal." The captain turned to face her crew. She saw fear in their eyes, yes, but also temptation. Who among them hadn't wondered about roads not taken? Who hadn't lain awake at night thinking about different choices, different outcomes, different lives? "No one makes this choice under pressure," Sarah said firmly. "Everyone take time, review your options, we'll reconvene in 6 hours for discussion." "Captain, I'm not sure time works that way here," Marcus pointed out. "Then we'll make it work that way. We're still human, we still need time to think. Dismissed, except for essential bridge crew." As the others filed out, Sarah returned to the viewport. The entities still moved in the nothing outside, patient as eternity. She pressed her forehead against the glass, closing her eyes. "Mom?" Sarah's eyes snapped open. The voice had been Emma's, clear as day, close as a heartbeat. But the bridge held only Chen Lin at navigation and David at engineering. Neither had spoken. "Mom, where are you?" Sarah's hand went to her locket, fingers trembling as she opened it. Emma's photograph smiled up at her, except the smile seemed different, wider, as if the photo had captured a moment slightly different from the one Sarah remembered. "Mom, I'm scared." "Emma?" Sarah whispered, not caring how insane she sounded. "Baby, where are you?" The entities outside the viewport stirred. Their movements took on a new quality, almost excited.
"Do you hear her, Sarah Chen? Your daughter calls across the void.
She is here. She has always been here. All versions of her, including the one who needs you now." The central screen shifted. No longer showing the lonely scientist Sarah, it now displayed Emma, but not the 8-year-old child Sarah had left behind on Earth. This Emma looked younger, perhaps 6, and she stood in the nothing outside the ship. Her small form seemed impossibly fragile against that absolute absence. "Help me, Mom! I'm lost!" Sarah's hands hit the viewport hard enough to hurt. "Emma, how did you... This isn't real! You're safe on Earth with your father!" "Am I?" The entity's voice took on a mocking quality. "Are you certain? In how many realities did you leave her safely behind? In how many did your departure break her? In how many did she follow you, somehow, into this space between spaces?" "You're lying! You have to be lying!" "We do not lie. We reveal. The girl you see is as real as any version of your daughter. She exists because you exist. She suffers because you chose ambition over her."
The words hit Sarah like physical blows, because wasn't that the truth she'd buried under layers of rationalization? She'd chosen this mission, chosen to leave Emma for nearly 3 years, chosen duty and discovery over bedtime stories and soccer games. "What do you want me to do?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking. "Choose. Choose the reality where you stayed, where Emma never experienced your absence, where you were the mother she needed. All other versions of you will cease, but you will persist as the Sarah Chen who made the right choice. And Emma, all Emmas, will have their mother." Sarah stared at the screen showing her happy parallel life. She could see herself now, older, making dinner in a kitchen filled with Emma's artwork. The parallel Sarah laughed at something off-screen, probably something Emma said. The joy seemed genuine, untainted by the regret that shadowed every memory of her daughter. "How do I choose?" "Simply step through. Walk into the screen. Become who you wish you'd been." Sarah moved toward the screen as if in a dream. Her hand reached out, fingers tingling as they approached the glass surface. Behind her, she heard David's sharp intake of breath, Chen Lin's whispered warning. She ignored them both. Her hand touched the screen. Warmth spread up her arm, welcoming, promising. She could feel the reality on the other side, solid and waiting. One step. That's all it would take. "Captain, don't!" Marcus burst onto the bridge, datapad in hand. "I've analyzed the energy signatures of these entities. They're not showing us alternate realities. They're feeding on the collapse of possibilities. Every time someone chooses, every time all those parallel lives compress into one, it releases enormous amounts of quantum energy. They want us to choose because it feeds them." Sarah's hand froze against the screen. "You're saying this is all fake?" "No. Worse, it's all real. Every version of you exists. But if you choose, you don't become that other Sarah. You simply kill all the other versions, and these things feast on the death of infinite possibilities." The entity's presence grew heavier, pressing against the ship like a sudden increase in gravity. "The scientist speaks truth, but what of it? Every choice you have ever made has killed infinite possibilities. Every moment of your life, alternate versions of you cease to exist. We simply make the process conscious, visible, honest." Sarah pulled her hand back from the screen, but she couldn't look away from that parallel life. "My daughter is safe, or she is not. In some reality, she thrives. In others, she suffers. You cannot save all versions of her. You can only choose which reality to inhabit." "What happens if we don't choose?"
Then you remain here, in the void, suspended between all possibilities, neither living nor dead, neither real nor unreal, conscious of every life you could have lived, but committed to none of them. Is that preferable? David spoke up, his voice carrying a new determination. Show me again. Show me the reality where I died. The screen shifted. David watched his parallel self's final moments. Family gathered around him, saying goodbye to a man who'd lived a shorter but fuller life than the one David had chosen. A life where he'd married young, had children, built something beyond himself before cancer took him at 42. I want it, David said quietly. I want that life, even if it's shorter, even if it ends. I want to have been that David instead of this one. David, no! Sarah reached for him, but he'd already moved to his screen. I'm sorry, Captain, but I see what I could have been, what I should have been, and I can't walk away from it. David placed both palms on the screen. Light erupted from the point of contact, swallowing him whole. For a moment, Sarah saw two versions of David superimposed over each other. The young engineer she'd served with, and the family man dying peacefully in a hospital bed. Then both faded, leaving only empty space where her crewman had stood. "No," Sarah whispered. "Bring him back." "He chose, as is his right, as is yours. Would you deny him the life he wanted?" Sarah spun to face the entities. "He wasn't choosing life. He was choosing death. You tricked him." "We showed him truth. If the truth led him to choose a shorter existence, but one he found more meaningful, is that not valid? You humans claim to value quality over quantity, yet you hesitate when offered that very choice." The bridge doors opened. Crew members flooded in, all talking at once. They'd witnessed David's disappearance through their own screens. Some wanted to follow him. Others demanded Sarah find a way out. The carefully maintained order of the ship frayed at the edges. "Everyone calm down," Sarah's command voice cut through the chaos. "I need you all to listen. These entities are feeding on our choices. Every time someone selects an alternate reality, they consume the energy of collapsed possibilities. We're not just making personal choices, we're potentially feeding something that might use that energy for purposes we can't understand." "But Captain," one crew member called out. Sarah recognized her as Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their xenobiologist. "If all those realities exist anyway, if all those versions of us are already living and dying, what difference does it make? At least one version gets to live the life they actually want." The question hung in the air. Sarah had no easy answer, because wasn't that Yuki right? Didn't every decision already collapse infinite possibilities? Didn't every moment of existence already constitute a genocide of potential futures? "I see him." Chen Lin's voice drew everyone's attention. She pointed at her console screen. "David, I can see him. He's... Captain, you need to see this." Sarah moved to Chen's station. The screen showed David, but not in a hospital bed dying of cancer. He stood in the nothing outside the ship, his face frozen in an expression of pure horror. Around him, the entities fed. "Oh God," Marcus breathed. "They lied. He didn't become that other David. He's trapped, suspended between realities." The entity's voice carried no shame, no apology. "We said he could choose. We did not promise his choice would succeed. The mechanism of reality collapse requires precise conditions, conditions that perhaps do not exist for one individual acting alone."
"You killed him," Sarah's hands clenched into fists. "You murdered my crew member." "He killed himself by choosing an impossibility, by believing he could simply step from one life into another without consequence. But the offer remains open. Perhaps the rest of you will have better success." Sarah looked at her crew. She saw fear, yes, but also something else. Calculation. They were weighing odds, wondering if they'd succeed where David failed. The temptation remained, even in the face of his fate. "No one else touches those screens," Sarah ordered. "That's a direct command. Anyone who disobeys will be confined to quarters." "With respect, Captain," Yuki said carefully, "how do you plan to enforce that? We have no weapons, no way to physically restrain 50 crew members if they decide they'd rather take their chances with choosing." She was right. Sarah could see it in the faces around her. David's fate had frightened them, but not enough, because each person believed they'd be smarter, more careful, more successful. It was the same psychology that made people buy lottery tickets despite impossible odds, the belief that somehow they'd be the exception. "No one else touches those screens," Sarah ordered. "That's a direct command. Anyone who disobeys will be confined to quarters." "With respect, Captain," Yuki said carefully, "how do you plan to enforce that? We have no weapons, no way to physically restrain 50 crew members if they decide they'd rather take their chances with choosing." She was right. Sarah could see it in the faces around her. David's fate had frightened them, but not enough, because each person believed they'd be smarter, more careful, more successful. It was the same psychology that made people buy lottery tickets despite impossible odds, the belief that somehow they'd be the exception. "We choose to return," Sarah said firmly, "all of us. Same reality we came from, same lives we were living before you pulled us here. That is not a choice. That is merely a return to default. The void does not deal in default. It deals in active selection. You must choose to become, not to remain." The ship shuddered again. This time, sections of the hull began to fade, becoming translucent. Sarah could see through the walls into rooms where crew members faced their own screens, their own temptations. Some were crying. Others argued with themselves, or with parallel versions that only they could see. "We're destabilizing," Marcus reported. "The ship's quantum coherence is breaking down. We have maybe 12 hours before the Artemis VII ceases to exist as a discrete object." 12 hours to decide our fates? Sarah laughed, the sound bitter. How generous. She walked back to the viewport, back to the nothing that had swallowed David and maybe would swallow them all. Her reflection stared back at her, and this time she was certain it moved independently. The reflection smiled, while her own face remained grim. "Hello, Sarah." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Female, familiar, herself. "I'm you," Sarah spoke, though its lips didn't move. "Or rather, you're me, or we're both echoes of something that never quite finished becoming. It's complicated in here." "Am I going insane?" Sarah asked the reflection. "Probably. But insanity and enlightenment look pretty similar from certain angles. I'm what you'd be if you'd chosen differently 18 years ago, when Emma's father proposed. You said yes in your reality. I said no in mine. And how did that work out for you?" The reflection's smile turned sad. "No Emma, no family. Just an empty apartment and accolades that don't keep you warm at night. But also no guilt, no missed moments, no looking at your daughter and wondering if she'll forgive you for choosing the stars over her." "I didn't choose the stars over her. I chose to build a better future." "Did you? Or did you choose to run away from the difficulty of staying? From the slow, grinding sacrifice of daily motherhood, from the terrifying possibility that you might not be enough for her?"
Sarah pressed her palm against the glass, matching it to the reflection's palm on the other side. "If you're me, you know that's not true. I know we tell ourselves it's not true. But Sarah, we've been lying to ourselves for so long. About why we do what we do. About what we really want. About who we really are." "Then tell me, what do I really want?" The reflection leaned closer, until Sarah could feel its breath despite the impossible physics. "You want to be forgiven by Emma, by yourself, by all the versions of you that made different choices. You want someone to tell you that it was okay to leave, that it was okay to prioritize your dreams, that the woman who stayed isn't better than you, just different, differently incomplete." Tears burned in Sarah's eyes. "And can anyone tell me that?" "No, because it's not about permission, Sarah. It's about acceptance. You have to accept that every choice costs something, that you can't be everything to everyone, including yourself, that the woman who stayed isn't better than you, just different, differently incomplete." The ship shuddered again, this time more violently. Sarah heard screaming from other sections. Another crew member had chosen, perhaps, or tried to choose and met David's fate.
"How do we get out of here?" Sarah asked her reflection. "You don't. Not all of you. The void demands payment. It always has. That's its nature. It shows you infinite possibilities and then asks, which ones are you willing to kill? Which versions of yourself are you willing to sacrifice so that one version might persist? So someone has to choose? Someone has to collapse all their possibilities? Not just someone, everyone. That's the only way the ship returns. Each person must choose their reality, and in doing so, destroy all their other selves. The combined energy of 53 people collapsing infinite realities into singular existence, that's enough power to punch through the void back into normal space." Sarah's stomach dropped. "You're saying we all have to become like David, trapped between realities?" "No, I'm saying you have to choose better than David did. He chose an impossibility, a past that had already ended, a life that had already been lived to completion. You have to choose a future, a specific, attainable future, and then commit to it so completely that all other possibilities die." "How?" The reflection pulled back, fading slightly. "By accepting that the version of you that chooses is the only version that will continue. By letting go of every road not taken, every might have been, every parallel life. By choosing not just a reality, but yourself as the only real version of yourself." "That's insane! I can't just decide that all these other versions of me aren't real." "No, but you can decide that they're not yours, that their lives, their choices, their joys and sorrows, those belong to them, not you. You can release them, free them to exist in their own realities while you commit fully to yours." The reflection was almost completely faded now, just a ghost image on the glass. "I have to go, but Sarah, remember this. Loving Emma doesn't mean you were wrong to leave, and leaving doesn't mean you don't love her. Both truths exist simultaneously. The question is, can you live with that paradox?" Then the reflection vanished, leaving Sarah alone with her actual reflection. She looked tired, old, but also somehow more real than she'd felt in years. Sarah turned to face her crew. They'd all heard everything, she realized. The bridge had become a confessional, and they'd all witnessed her breakdown, and maybe, hopefully, her breakthrough. "I won't order you to choose," Sarah said quietly. "I can't. This is too personal,
too final. But I will tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose my reality, the one where I left Emma to come on this mission, where I made that choice and have to live with it, where I go home in 7 months and maybe she forgives me and maybe she doesn't, but either way, I'll be there to try. She walked to her screen, the one showing the parallel Sarah who'd stayed. That Sarah still looked happy, still looked complete, but she also looked like a stranger now, not better or worse than the real Sarah, just different, differently incomplete. I'm sorry, she told the screen Sarah. I'm sorry that you'll cease to exist, that your life, your choices, your version of Emma, all of it will collapse when I choose. But you're not me. You made different decisions, you lived a different life, and I can't live it for you. Sarah placed her hand on the screen, but she didn't step through. Instead, she pulled that parallel reality toward her current one, not to replace her life, but to collapse it into non-existence. She felt the energy of that death, that unbecoming, surge through her. All around her, other screens showed other Sarahs, hundreds of them, thousands. Each choice she'd ever made creating branching realities, each with its own version of her living its own life. She saw herself as a teacher, a doctor, a homeless wanderer, a president, a criminal, a saint, a failure, a success, everything and nothing all at once. And she let them all go. I am Sarah Chen, captain of the Artemis VII, mother of Emma Chen, daughter of Michael and Liu Chen. I am this version, this life, these choices, and I accept them. Not because they're perfect, but because they're mine. And all you other Sarahs, I release you. I free you to cease. Your lives weren't mine. Your choices weren't mine. Your regrets and joys and loves and losses, those were yours. And now they're gone, and I'm what remains. The energy surge intensified. Sarah felt like she was being torn apart and reassembled simultaneously. Every possible version of herself screamed in protest at the annihilation, then fell silent. One by one, the screens showing her parallel lives went dark, until only one remained, the screen showing her as she was, right now, in this moment. The entities roared, not in anger, but in satisfaction. Yes, you understand. You have chosen yourself. Now the others must do the same. Around the bridge, crew members approached their screens. Some went peacefully, tears streaming down their faces as they said goodbye to lives they'd never live. Others hesitated, hands hovering inches from the glass, unable to commit. But one by one, they made their choices. Marcus chose the life he'd lived, the scientist who'd sacrificed family for discovery. He wept as he did it, watching hundreds of versions of himself with children and grandchildren wink out of existence. Chen Lin chose to remain the navigator she had become, letting go of the concert pianist she might have been. Her fingers twitched as if playing one final silent song for that other self. Yuki, Dr. Hassan, Commander Torres, Engineer Kim, one after another, 52 people chose their singular existence and killed infinite possibilities. The energy built like a wave preparing to break. The ship groaned under the strain of so much quantum collapse happening simultaneously. The nothing outside began to crack, fissures of light appearing in the absolute darkness. Then Chen Lin gasped, "Captain! Another life sign! Inside the void! It's reading as human! Child-sized!" Sarah's heart stopped. The screen shifted to show Emma again. Not the parallel version, not an image. Emma, herself, physically present in that impossible space. She looked exactly as Sarah remembered, down to the small scar on her chin from a bicycle accident 2 years earlier. "Emma! Baby, how?" Sarah pressed against the viewport, desperate to reach through the glass. She followed you. The entity spoke, its voice different now, satisfied, as if everything had been leading to this moment. Across the distance between worlds, across the boundaries of reality. A child's love is a powerful thing, Sarah Chen. Powerful enough to breach the void itself.
Marcus ran scans, his face going pale. The readings are real, Captain. That's not a projection or a parallel version. That's Emma Chen from our reality. Somehow, impossibly, she's here. That's not possible, Sarah's mind reeled. She's on Earth, safe with her father.
You abandoned her, the entity continued, and in her loneliness, in her desperate need for her mother, she reached out. Children do not understand the boundaries between possible and impossible. They simply wish, and sometimes the universe listens. Sarah stared at her daughter's terrified face. Emma's small body shivered in that impossible cold, her breath visible despite the absence of atmosphere. This couldn't be real. It couldn't be. But Emma's fear was real. Her tears were real. Her voice crying, "Mommy, please," was real. You have chosen yourself, Sarah Chen. You have collapsed all possibilities into one. But now you face a final choice. You can return to your reality, take your crew home, complete your mission, or you can save your daughter, but not both. What do you mean? Sarah's voice came out as a growl. To retrieve her requires one more sacrifice, one more collapse. You have chosen yourself as the real Sarah Chen, but what if you are not? What if the real Sarah is the one who stayed, the one who never left? What if this Sarah, the captain, the explorer, is the parallel life, the mistake? The words struck like a blade. Sarah looked at her crew, their faces showing the same horror she felt. They'd all chosen, they'd all sacrificed infinite versions of themselves to remain the people they were. But what if they'd chosen wrong? You're lying, Sarah whispered. This is another trick. Is it? Look at your daughter. She's here because part of you, the truest part, never left Earth, never abandoned her. That part called to her, pulled her here, because the real Sarah Chen is the mother, not the captain. The real choice was made years ago when you boarded this ship. You chose wrong then. Now you can correct it. Emma sobbed, her small form crumpling. Mom, I'm so cold. Please, I just want to go home. Sarah felt herself fracturing. Everything she'd just chosen, everything she'd accepted about her life, it all crumbled under the weight of her daughter's suffering. What was a mission compared to Emma? What was discovery compared to her child? Captain, Marcus's hand on her shoulder was gentle but firm. This doesn't feel right. The timing, the way Emma appeared just after we all made our choices, it's too convenient. Convenient? She spun on him. My daughter is dying out there. Or something wants us to believe she is. These entities have lied before. David, I don't care about David. I care about Emma. But even as she said it, doubt crept in. Marcus was right about the timing. And how could Emma have actually crossed the void? Children's love might be powerful, but it couldn't literally breach the boundaries of reality. Could it? Unless this was what the entities fed on all along. Not just the energy of collapsed possibilities, but the energy of impossible choices. The kind of choice where any answer destroyed you. Show me proof, Sarah demanded. Prove that's really my daughter. Emma looked up, tears streaking her face. You want proof? You want proof that I'm your daughter? I remember the night before you left. You sang to me. That stupid lullaby your mom used to sing. The one about the moon watching over little birds. You told me I'd be home before I knew it. You lied, Mom.
You lied and then you left."
"The moon watches while sparrows sleep," Sarah whispered, the first line of the lullaby. "And mother's love runs endless deep," Emma finished, her voice small and broken. "You promised, Mom. You promised you'd always be there when I needed you. But you weren't. You left me, and now I'm lost, and I don't know how to get home, and I'm so scared." The last word came out as a wail that shattered what remained of Sarah's resolve. That was her daughter. No projection, no parallel version, no trick. That was Emma, suffering because of Sarah's choices. "Tell me how to save her," Sarah said to the entities, "whatever it costs." "The cost is you. You must unmake your choice. Accept that the Sarah who stayed is the real one. That this Sarah, the captain, the explorer, is the error. Let her collapse into non-existence, and you will awake as the Sarah who never left. Emma will be safe. She will never have been here, and you will have been with her all along." "And the mission? The crew?" "They made their choices. They will return to their reality, but without you. In their reality, Captain Sarah Chen died in the void. In your new reality, you never became captain at all." Sarah looked at her crew. They'd followed her into this nightmare, trusted her to bring them home, and she would, just not as their captain, not the woman they knew. "Don't do it!" Marcus pleaded. "Sarah, please, something about this is wrong." "My daughter is what's wrong," she shouted. "Look at her. She's dying out there because of me, because I chose ambition over her, because I thought the universe needed me more than she did." "The universe doesn't need any of us," Chen-Lin said softly. "That's not the point. The point is who we choose to be, and you chose to be here, with us, on this mission. That wasn't wrong, Captain. That was just hard." "Hard?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "Hard is making dinner when you're tired. Hard is helping with homework. This is impossible. This is having to choose between being myself and saving my child." "No," Yuki stepped forward, "is having to choose between being yourself and becoming someone else. If you accept that the other Sarah is the real one, then you die. This version of you, the woman who led us here, who helped us all choose ourselves, she stops existing. Is that really what Emma would want?" "I don't know," Sarah's voice cracked. "I don't know what she wants. I don't know what the right choice is. I just know I can't watch her suffer." "Then don't watch," Marcus said. "Look at me instead. Look at your crew. We're real too. We're here too. And we're telling you that something is wrong with this whole setup."
Sarah forced herself to look away from Emma, to focus on Marcus. "What do you mean?" He pulled up data on his pad, hands shaking slightly. "I've been analyzing the quantum signatures. Emma's presence here, it's generating the exact same energy pattern as when we made our choices, when we collapsed our parallel selves. She's feeding them, Captain. Or rather, your anguish over her is feeding them." "You think she's bait?" "I think she might be real and still be bait. These entities don't have to lie about everything. Maybe Emma really is here. Maybe she really did somehow reach across space because she missed you. But that doesn't mean they're being honest about how to save her." Sarah turned back to Emma. Her daughter had slumped against the nothing, barely conscious. Time was running out, if time existed here at all. "What do I do?" she whispered. "How do I save her without destroying myself?"
"There is no other way," the entity insisted. "The child is here because you are divided, because part of you never left Earth. That division created the bridge she crossed. To close the bridge, to send her back, you must become whole. You must choose one Sarah and accept that the other is the illusion."
"But I already chose. I chose to be this Sarah, the captain."
"Did you?
Or did you simply choose to continue avoiding the choice? You said you accepted your life, but you still carry guilt, still wonder if you made the wrong decision, still question if the Sarah who stayed might have been happier, truer, more real. The entity was right. Sarah had gone through the motions of choosing, had said the words, had felt the collapse of her parallel selves, but deep down the doubt remained, the guilt, the whisper that maybe, just maybe, she'd chosen wrong years ago when she'd boarded this ship. "You want me to forgive myself?" Sarah said slowly, understanding dawning. "That's what this is really about. Not choosing between realities, but accepting the reality I've already chosen, without reservation, without guilt, without doubt." "And can you do that? Can you truly accept that leaving your daughter was necessary, that it wasn't selfishness masquerading as duty? Can you forgive yourself for the pain you caused her?" Sarah looked at Emma, really looked at her, and she saw something she'd missed before, a faint glow around her daughter's form, not the harsh light of the entity's energy feeding, but something gentler, more familiar. The same glow that had surrounded all the parallel selves before they collapsed. "She's not real," Sarah breathed. "Not in the way you made me think. She's another possibility, another version. The Emma who might have been if I'd made different choices. The Emma who missed me so much she somehow manifested here." "Does that make her less real, less your daughter, less deserving of your love?" "No, but it means saving her isn't about erasing myself. It's about letting her go, the same way I let go of all those other Sarahs." Emma's eyes opened, meeting Sarah's gaze through the viewport. For a moment, she looked confused, then understanding spread across her young face. "Mom, am I one of those parallel people?" "Yes, baby. You're the Emma who exists because I didn't. The Emma from the reality where I stayed home." "So if you're real, I'm not?" "You're real. You're just not mine. You're hers, the other Sarah's, and she's yours, and I have to let you go back to her." Tears streamed down Emma's face, but she nodded. "Will it hurt?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted, "but I'll be with you, as much as I can be, until the very end." Sarah placed her hand on the viewport again, but this time she didn't pull Emma toward her reality. She pushed, gently, sending the parallel Emma back toward the life where she belonged, back to the other Sarah who'd stayed. "I love you," Sarah whispered, "every version of you, in every reality, but you're not mine to keep. You belong to a life I didn't live, and I have to accept that." Emma smiled through her tears. "Tell my mom, your other self, tell her it's okay, that she made the right choice too, that I was happy." "I will." Emma began to fade, the glow around her intensifying. As she disappeared, Sarah felt the guilt that had haunted her for years begin to dissolve. Not because leaving Emma had been right or wrong, but because she finally accepted that both truths existed. Leaving had hurt Emma, and leaving had been necessary for Sarah. Both things were real. Both things mattered, and Sarah could hold both truths without letting either destroy her. The entity's roar shook the ship. "No, you were supposed to choose, to collapse, to feed us." "I did choose," Sarah said calmly. "I chose to accept that every version of me and every version of Emma are real in their own realities. I chose to release them without needing to destroy them. I chose forgiveness of myself and all my parallel selves. And that choice doesn't give you anything to feed on,
because it doesn't collapse possibilities. It honors them. The nothing outside began to crack in earnest. Light poured through, real light, starlight, the light of normal space. The entities shrieked, their forms destabilizing. "You have broken the mechanism. We've found the real way out," Marcus interrupted, his console blazing with data. It wasn't about collapsing possibilities. It was about accepting them, all of them, simultaneously. "Captain, if everyone on this ship can do what you just did, accept every version of themselves without needing to kill them off, we create a quantum superposition. We exist in all states at once, and that paradox is incompatible with the void. It'll spit us back into normal space just to resolve the contradiction." Sarah turned to her crew. "You heard him. Stop trying to choose one reality. Accept all of them. Every version of yourself that exists, existed, or might exist. Love them. Forgive them. Let them be real without needing to make any single one the only real version." "That's impossible," someone said. "We can't be in all realities at once." "We already are," Sarah replied. "We always have been. Every moment, every choice, we branch. We just usually don't notice. But here, in this place, we can feel it. So feel it, embrace it. Be all your possible selves simultaneously." It shouldn't have worked. It violated every principle of quantum mechanics Sarah understood. But then again, they were in a place that violated every principle of reality she understood. So maybe here, in the space between spaces, impossible things became possible. One by one, the crew members stopped fighting, stopped trying to collapse into singular existence. Instead, they opened themselves to the full reality of their quantum nature. They became superpositions, existing in all possible states simultaneously. The void couldn't contain them. It was built to feed on collapse, on the death of possibilities. But what they were doing wasn't death, it was apotheosis. They were becoming more real, not less, more themselves by accepting all their selves.
The void couldn't contain them. It was built to feed on collapse, on the death of possibilities. But what they were doing wasn't death. It was apotheosis. They were becoming more real, not less, more themselves by accepting all their selves.